So yeah, I've been gone for at least the past month. I had traveled back home, back to New York, and just didn't have, equipment to stream or anything like that, nor the internet. So didn't really do any of this, and we're very behind because as you can see, 6 majors have happened already in the past, I don't know, like 4 weeks, past month at this point for the season, which is crazy. So there's a lot to cover. There's a lot that's happened, and we're going to talk about each one, kind of just overview of what's happening, how the season's shaping up, and what to kind of expect going into 2025. So the first major that did happen was Smash Awesome. An event series that I don't think many people might have known of because its very first iteration, or the only other time I think it happened, was January of 2019, where Zachary won. It was not a tiered event for PGR because it was before the season started, but for LumiRank it'd be equivalent of like a B tier event. This one was pretty much a super major. Huge amount of talent all came out to compete, and lo and behold, the winner of the event was honestly one I don't think too many people were expecting to win right off the bat right now, or like his come up was coming, like he was getting back to where he was expected early in the year, but he wasn't super at that level yet, and it's Hurt. Hurt wins what I'm pretty sure is his first super major, which is crazy considering like it felt like Hurt was for a while on a major winning streak, or like was winning quite a few back to back in Japan, but he never won a super major. And then finally, first of course event of the new season, after not making the top 10 in the rankings, just missing at 12th, comes back full force and has a pretty crazy run. Yeah, Sin, Karage, Akaki Kusu, and then Occult x2 and Shuton x2 after losing to Shuton in the 3-0 earlier. And yeah, there's a lot of game 5s here too, so these were not exactly like shutout sets. They were pretty close. I think what's interesting is that he beat Akla twice in a row, especially considering I think the last time they played at, I believe it was Old Core, that Akla did find the set game 5. So the fact that the second set also wasn't that close was pretty crazy. And let's talk about Shuton too. Shuton was pretty close to winning, and we'll get to him later, but pretty close to winning the first event year in his first super major in a long time. Just unfortunate to like lose in the game 10 finals, but I feel like sometimes Shuton in Japan struggles to make it this far into the bracket. He'll find like those top placements sometimes more in North America than in Japan, so it's been really cool to see him like finally really hit that mark of consistency we'll see later down the line. Hurt starting the season at the top is hype as fuck. Yeah, man. We'll get also more into him later because this is not his only event this season so far. But Hurt's return's nice. And he's not the only player who returned, because making his grand return to a top 8 is Kaninabe. Kaninabe had a very like a middling to not strong season in comparison last year to his breakout year in 2022. I think he was top 100 in the first half of 2024, but failed to make so in the second half. But he did finally return to a top 8 in the major of this event, taking some pretty big wins too, finding some top 100 wins over Elgo, and yeah, beating Umeki and T, which is pretty dope. So seeing him back is also really nice, and this is not the only major he's already top 8 this season. We'll once again talk to him about him a bit more later, but just having that resurgence of a player who like was incredibly hype and hot on the scene and coming in, I won't say he fell off. He just had a really inconsistent and rough time this 2024, and it's just nice to have him back because Light has been the only Fox for a long time before Kaninabe really showed up, except for like Pasariman, but then Pasariman went more into commentating and content creation from my understanding. So it's just nice to have one that could potentially be a top 50 level again in the realm this year. Obviously there's some normal names that you see here: Shuton, Akala, Akayikusu, even like Uwame is a pretty, not frequent, but like you'll see his name come up quite a bit in these top 8s too. I think this is his first time maybe top 8ing a super major, but this isn't really a surprise. Mia kind of low down at 7th, but first time top 8ing the major also was Carmelo. And Carmelo's pretty known for defeating Gluttony at I think it's Kowloon 9 with Sumabato back earlier in the year, and made top 50 in the first half of 2024. Had I wouldn't say a slower 2024.2, but just had not less consistent, but maybe just outpaced by other players. And he finally did it. He finally made a top 8 in major after being cursed to get 9th at like every major he went to for a while. And he defeated some pretty big names like Ryuo, Motsunabe, Karage, and Game 5 with T. So yeah, that's also pretty big. Another player who just always was on so close at the cusp. And it was always interesting because he did shift. He was mainly like Steve and Aegis for most of 2024, and then started adding Shulk to his lineup and kind of using Shulk more than Aegis. I think he might still use Aegis from time to time for certain matchups, but it was interesting now finally seeing the Shulk kind of like pay off and contribute to the results besides just Steve. I didn't realize this was Carmel's first major top 8. Yeah, this man has been cursed with 9th places. Like 13th at Umabura, 9th at Maizuma West, 9th at Old Core, 9th at Delta, 9th at Old Core 2nd, 9th at Kowloon. Just always came so short, but finally made it this time around. That's the first major of the year, but it wasn't the only major to kick off the year, if I'm mistaken. I believe the same weekend was also GSM in France. In France. GSM, yeah, it was a kind of a smaller event. I think, yeah, only 150 entrants. And France having a major this early in the season is also really nice because it's something that doesn't normally happen for them until like June, or just Europe in general. And Europe really did show up. But the first person I have to talk about, the first person we really need to talk about, is the brand new major winner that happened, winning their first major in Ultimate, not their first major ever, considering they will have an Evo title in Smash 4, but it is Lima. Lima wins GSM, taking down pretty big names. Beat Raffalo, who was playing really hot this event, and Naderyu, but also like Snow and Doramigi twice. This is like by far, maybe not by far, Lima's best run in Ultimate. I think maybe you could argue Invitational or Cirque had better wins, but just being able to finally climb up and be the second Bayonetta to win, and finally getting to that like mantle that Lima has shown that they're capable of back in Smash Wii U with Bayonetta is super exciting. And I think having a player finally break into that echelon of major winners is like, I feel like once you win that first major, you break the curse of that mental stack that comes on you as a competitor of being able to win the next, because it's like, oh, I already won one. It's not like you have that mental pressure anymore. Lima doing so means, I think, that finally getting over the hump where you saw those second places back then, now that he's finally taken a major win, it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if Lima wins another one sometimes this year. But yeah, super cool to have a brand new major winner already the start of the season. And I think that bodes well for how things are still planning out and not just going to be dominated by a certain group of players like part of 2023 and 2024 was. But yeah, EU showed up, and it wasn't, I mean, it's pretty much the usual suspects. It's the players you expect to do so. But Gluto was not the highest placing EU player for once, and it wasn't Crepe either. It was actually Raffalo, and Raffalo had a really good event. He fell to Lima pretty early in top 32 because they were the 8th and 9th seed, but beat Austria's best player Johnny, and then beat Raru and Crepe in 2 Game 5 sets, as well as Glutony, and then Snow and Siski. So this is already probably one of Raffalo's best runs to date. It's crazy how this event redefined Europe after what felt like a year of not really finding the success that they needed to in terms of their defending their home turf. It's been almost like a year since King Kong, where I would say is the last event that they kind of did that. Having this happen at so early in the season already sets a precedent of like, okay, EU already has players who probably will end up in the top 50 or probably will be ranked well because they found these really solid performances. And Siski also, who's been really consistent in Europe recently, finds another really good placement, beat Ashimo and Ball and Shattuck, like had a very good event overall. And yeah, I feel like Europe is entering kind of a new era where it's just not just Glutony who can perform. What's going to matter though is just how they do out of seas. Overseas, and how they perform when they do travel, because that's kind of been their biggest downfall. Whenever they travel to NA or Japan, there seems to be a bit of a struggle. But they've been defending in home turf, and I think that's already a really great start. Japan did also show up and kind of stood their ground too. I mean, 4 players in the top 8. It was a bit expected with the players who were flown out. Doramigi getting second, We'll see a bit of a pattern as time goes on, but Dorimigi's been insanely consistent already this first half of the season, or I should say this first few weeks of the season. And we had a really, yeah, I see it in chat. We already had a really crazy player make top 8. The first King K. Rool to ever do it. Flown out as pretty much like Maidakun's +1, and it's Ball. So Ball had a really great run also against just European talent, beat Supasemi and NaderU to make top 8 after falling to Glutini 3-0. Didn't fail to go much farther, unfortunately. There was I would say if you watched any of his sets, his set between him and NaderU was really funny because it's just, oh, this is Pichu getting beaten the crap out of by a heavy really badly, and it's very funny to watch because it's K. Rool. But it's funny because Ball is also like not the strongest in terms of results in Japan. I think he got 17th at a D tier like the next week. So I'm very curious to see what this means in general for Ball or in the players he beat. It's very weird. But yeah, a lot of usual suspects to see top 8 outside of the Ball. But some players falling a little just short. Crepe getting 9th, losing to, if I recall, Raffles Game & Watch, which has been a pretty big Steve counter that I know Raffles been developing for the past year, as well as Ashimo. And then NaderU, I also want to talk about because he did beat Raru 3-0. So even though he got 9th and lost to Lehman Ball, he did take a really big win over Raru, who's finally also like starting to build up his season. Ball never topped 8 a ranked event before this. Jesus Christ. So those two kicked off the season and it was insanity all around. It's already like a what is happening, what is going on this season. This is not what was expected by anyone. And then the next week was Sumabato 54. Just a major, not a super major. And lo and behold, look who is sitting at first place. It is Dorimichi. Dorimichi just went from a second place at a major to another first place at a major and just beat. Well, he fell early to Rarikusu, and it looked like that there was going to be another brand new major winner at Sumabato, and then just decided, screw it, I'm going to go on a run in losers, and defeated most of Japan and West Japan's depth. Only really Torigiri and Rarikusu being able to potentially stop Rarikusu. I mean, potentially stop Dorimichi. But yeah, no. Dorimichi, as I said, besides that early loss to Rarikusu, I mean, you lost the second place and then came back and won, so it's not even like it's bad. Dorimichi just went off and already claiming, I think this is only their second major win, but the fact that they kicked off the season with a second and first is already telling that this isn't the inconsistent or like the one who like just would randomly fall to some players sometimes, Dorimichi. This is a new Dorimichi who's here to just consistently be at the top, and we'll see how it goes going forward. But I can't ignore second place because Rarix has been on a tear recently. I feel like we finally are seeing him really hone in on his trio of like Falco, DK, and Steve and when to use them and how to use them. And it's really finding success because it's not the only event that I'm going to be talking about him right now. But yeah, he, as I said, beat Dorimichi, also found wins on like Komei and Shion, and had just a really straightforward, solid run. You can see though that he also beat a bunch of other depth players, and this bracket in general was like an absolute mess. I think Dorimichi and Ashimo, yeah, were the only, and Rari, sorry, I forgot he was, only 3 of the top 8 seeds made top 8. This bracket was nutty. I remember staying up being like, what is happening? And to just like emphasize this is having Shion not just make their first top 8 major ever, but also get 3rd, which is crazy. Another hero player top 8ing and just finding new heights, beating Parentbox, who just made top 50, Rocky, who I think won the last Sumabato, if I'm not mistaken, and then Kainabe, who's been on fire, and Torigiri, who could have won this event as well. Speaking of Kainabe, they're here again. Another top 8 right in a row, playing on fire. Ashimo's still here. Goryoka makes top 8 for the season, so is Komei, Torigiri. Players who you'd see at sometimes as Sumabato top 8s. Top 8 seeds didn't make it. Rocky and Navy just fell short at 9th, and Raru and Snow they fell at 13th. Raru had struggling kind of to pick it up at the beginning of the season. You lost to Kuropanzu and Goryoka. And Snow too, losing to Kainabe and Rocky, but once again, it's just because so many players fell into losers way earlier than expected. Week after, we have 2 back-to-back majors, or I'd say 2 majors on the same weekend. Both super majors, one in Japan, one in New York City. Let's start with MaesumaTOP 1. Aquila finally finds his major win after it feels like he's been struggling to find it since, I think, Sumabato 52. Didn't get first at Ult Core, and it might have been another event that I'm forgetting that he failed to. Oh, and Smash Awesome, but finally came back out on top at this event, and yep, beat pretty much a bunch of Japan's top players, Navy, Rocky, Raru, Doramiki twice, but look at that, Doramiki again, top 2. Doramiki again in a really good spot. Really, really scary that your first 3 events of the season, I think only 3 events so far of the season, have been, you know, top 2 finishes. That is like, Doramiki might be #1 in the world right now if we're making a ranking just off of this time period, which is very silly, but it's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. And once again, just solid run against typical people you expect at these big events. Rocky not really showing that one Sumabato major win was a fluke. Got a top 3 finish, beat Mia and Carmelo and Yoshidora and Alice. Like, this was a really amazing run. And Ken, like, this is an insane run. This is a better run than the major he won, which is crazy. It's so crazy. I didn't really get to watch this event because I was at LMBM, so like, I didn't really get to look at the complete runs of everyone's before this. So that's absurd. Rocky with top 3 finish. Mia, once again, not really ending up in that top 2 finish that you expect him to hit to in Japan, kind of having a slower start to this season. Kind of finding losses to unexpected players. He lost to Double Steve this event, which you'd be kind of surprised considering he's been taking Aquila's number recently against his Steve and beating him out at these events. So kind of a surprising thing to see Mia fall to. Then you have some typical names you'd expect to see here. Alice, Masa are players who are capable of making it. Carmelo, finally after breaking the top 8 curse, making another. And Raru making his first top 8 after having 2 slower events. So yeah, pretty expected. This was a pretty wild event too. A lot of players kind of showed up and shown out. 9th place finishes by level 1. This is like 17th from Kai Nabe is still pretty good. That's not like I think he went like 2-2 at past events in 2024, so not bad at all. Chag ended up with 17th, I think his last event in Japan. Beat Torigiri and Mark, which is pretty cool. But overall, yeah, very exciting event. A lot of cool players came out and definitely kind of shaping the show. The newer talent of Japan's definitely taken over. It's not really as defined by the older players that it was before, or those players have moved on to do other things. Like it's the new age is here and they're here to stay. And I think that is, especially in West Japan, who I guess for the most part, either best players moved to Tokyo like T, or didn't have as strong as a player base as Kanto back in like before pandemic times. So I guess this scene also is just like, it's finally established itself and it's definitely the #1 in the world. But expect to see these players constantly in these top 8s, and if they fly overseas, expect them to make big waves. We'll talk about Genesis in a bit because there are some Japanese players going we need to talk about. This is probably Steve's best tournament in a while. Yeah, that too. I feel like we haven't seen 3 Steve, like more than 1 Steve, I should say, in the top 8 in a while. So this is definitely one of those really interesting events where it's like, oh, right, Steve is a really good character. Now there's a lot of really competent players who can use him, especially in Japan. So the other event was Luminosity Makes Big Moves. I was actually here in person. I did the top 10 live reveal, so that was super fun. The event was super dope. I'm originally from New York, so I got to just take a train into the event, and I didn't have to worry about a hotel or anything, and that was awesome. But yeah, I would highly recommend going. The venue's super sick. You're in New York City, so you can go wherever you want for food. Unlike, except if you're me, you end up getting fucking Jollibees. I mean, I love Jollibees. Jollibees is awesome, but you have so many more food options. So yeah, Luminosity Makes Big Moves happens. Was there for the live reveal. Sparko ranks #1 in the world and decides to just have someone in chat already beat me to it. One of the most insane weekends of his life. Gets ranked #1 in the world, has one of the most dominant showings we've seen in a long time at a major like this. Don't think he lost that many games. Yeah, didn't go game 5 with anyone, just maybe lost one periodic one from time to time. Incredibly dominant grands, like stupidly dominant. And then, I'm not going to pull it up right now, but he got second in Rivals, and he's only been playing for like a month. That's insane. That man's Clarin is crazy good. His utilization of like spacing and tippers with Clarin was so mind-boggling. I don't know, man. That kid is fucking amazing at these kind of games. And now that Rivals has been announced at Evo, if you didn't see that, I think yesterday, I really would like to see a world where Spargo, now that he's accomplished #1 in the world in Ultimate, kind of focuses his shift on Rivals and tries to become the best player in a different game. I don't think that's going to happen. I think his true love is this game. I think he really loves Ultimate and will continue to defend his crown, or like that would be his main goal. But I think that would be a super sick thing for him to do, especially because it shows he's capable of playing more than one game at a time. But yeah, beat a bunch of good players and didn't really struggle. Hurt. First event overseas in a bit, I think. Second place finish, which is really, really something else considering, as I said, the end of, or like the second half of 2024 was not as strong as what you were expecting from his first half, and finally back on pace to being a top 10 player again. Beat like Peanut and had to fight 3 Nesses in a row, which sounds fucking awful for Snake, but did it after being the best to do, like the best, probably the best 2 Nesses right now, if we're being frank. Unfortunately, just didn't have an answer to Spargo this set, and I think is going to be his biggest struggle over time. I just think Spargo has such a lock right now on Cloud Snake matchup, and I don't really know what Hurt can do to push it further. And then, yes, you're up top 3. I think this is maybe his best Super Major performance ever in terms of placement. Definitely a player who is going to just be in the top 20 for the rest, I think, this game's lifespan, and someone who's not going anywhere. Top of that, yeah, it's typical faces like Light and Tweak and Leo. Wrath taking over Sonic's place because he missed for being sick, but I think has been pretty consistently making top 8 at these Luminosity Make Moves events recently, so another player you're not really surprised to see here. But the return of the Buzz! The Buzz is back! And the Buzz came back with, you know, pretty nice run with pretty big wins, beating Riddles, Light, and Tweak all in a row. And I think if you're a North American player and the Buzz hasn't entered in a while, you're not prepared for Rosalina. So this is definitely like the Buzz jump scare. And he said, I remember him apparently saying that he was feeling pretty good this weekend and was like, yeah, I'm going to do well. And he definitely showed up. 3-0ing Light is pretty crazy too. So yeah, it's good to have the Buzz back. It's good to see another North American top talent kind of arrive back on the scene and put in the work and put in those results and finding love for the game again after being kind of soured on it for so long. So yeah, that's really nice. I'm happy to see the Buzz back in the fray, and I really hope he continues to put up these kind of results because I know he's definitely capable of doing so. Some other crazy new peaks for players. First is J-Job. I think placing the highest a Kirby has ever done a Super Major, with Gilhue doing 13th at S Factor, and had some pretty big wins over Cola and Jackal. So this is, and Beast Mode Paul. I didn't even remember this one happened. So this is probably one of Kirby's best runs to date at any event. Both of those players, J-John and Gilhue, are really pushing this character, and it's really awesome to see this far into the game, just these characters that a lot of people writ off actually making these runs and showcasing that, yeah, no, these characters are actually capable of doing it in this meta, and it's all about really just honing that craft to do so if the character has the toolkits capable. So especially Kirby, with a character who can lock down people in really long combos and strings, I feel like that's something that's really prominent now in this meta. So I'm not really surprised to see Kirby actually doing well, or like not well, but finding its niche. And then PK Chris had a really good run too. Just shy of top 100, has been pretty consistently making some solid placements, but had probably best event of his career right now, beating MK Leo, Brujo, and my boy Smirk, Colorado rep. Another player who like is finally, I think, crossing that threshold of being a real serious threat in brackets, and that's awesome to see. It's always awesome to see players who you've seen these names competing for years, finally leveling up to this point of really pushing themselves this far. A lot of big names were here, and yeah, it just overall was a very good time. If you ever get to go, I highly recommend doing so. It was an awesome event all around. I had a lot of fun. So I think there's only one other major to talk about that happened last weekend, and that is Seibugeki 18, another super major. This first half of the year has been super major after super major after super major, and it's crazy. People are just going to events. And hey, I think since the first time since 2020, after he won EVO Japan, Shuton won a super major. It's been so long. Like, I genuinely can't think of the last time this has happened besides that. I'm pretty confident that is the last event that he's won that was considered this high of a tier. And yeah, it is the first time a Seibugeki hit super major as well. He's never hit S tier before, but another kind of similar fashion of dropping in losers and top 8 to just clearing a loser's run and kind of stopping Snow from winning his first major, unfortunately. But overall, I do think this has kind of been a long time coming. Shuton's been, especially the second half of 2024, really consistent in his top placements, has been inching closer and closer to that first. And it's really just happy to see him win one that hasn't been like a very light major. Delta 8.5 was very, I think it was the lowest tiered major last season. So it's just really nice to see him be like capable of taking something of this caliber. And he beat a lot of amazing players along the way. I think that's obviously for anyone who gets first at these big events. So yeah, Shuton finally doing it, and another player who's now a first and a second at the two events they entered is crazy. Snow finding second, which I think is his best super major placement to date. Almost winning his first, unfortunately just couldn't clutch out the game 5 against Shuton in the reset. But his time's coming. I feel like Snow is probably up next in terms of getting that major win. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens sometime this first half of the year. He's definitely the one who's up next to do it. A lot of typical names you'll see: Ashimo Mia. This might be Fui's first top 8 at a super major. I don't know if that is correct, but he definitely top 8s majors frequently enough, or at least more frequently recently. He's definitely been at that position more often than not currently. And then Rarix again, top 8, and a new face. A new face for making a top 8 ever. Another Japanese Yoshi. If you've watched events, you've probably heard of Mark before, and their run was pretty solid too. Yamanaction and Leia as well have kept in, I don't know actually how to pronounce this tag, if it's like mild na ho or something. I don't know how to actually pronounce the DK tag, but overall had a solid run. This was another like S tier with some decent upsets as well. So, oh, and Gachi, I almost forgot about Gachibi. It's not their first top 8 ever. Maybe it's their first super major top 8. But they also had a pretty strong run. They beat Mia, which is insane. Syrup and Snow are the front runners, definitely. If I had to choose one from each region, it's definitely Syrup for North America, Snow in Japan, and then I'd probably say Siski in Europe over Raffle right now. Raffle's around GSM's really good, but I feel like Siski's a player who gets closer and closer to it more often than not. But who knows? We're probably gonna get some random ass one. I wouldn't be surprised if some, like, I don't know, where we get like a Rarix major win or two, because he's starting to get up there as well. We'll see. But yeah, those were all the majors I missed since I was traveling, and I think we already have another one this weekend coming up with Sumabato 55, another super major Saturday night for me. So a lot of majors already to pick up this season. It's been awesome to see. I really feel like a lot of people were burnt out in 2023, and 2024 was a lot of rebuilding. And 2025 seems to be like the season where people are kind of giving more shits again and really getting into it and going to events and really pushing to strive to be one of the best in the game. And that's really what anyone can ask for a game that is this long into its lifespan. So after the day of the stream, Sumabato was also happening, and I wanted to incorporate not just Sumabato 54, but also Sumabato 55 into this video. So I'm going to also go over that. Let's take a look at the results right here. First of all, Mia finally wins their first major of the season. Considering that he's entered already like 4 or 5, kind of surprising that it took him this long to get there. But overall had a really strong event against a bunch of players who haven't really given him too much issue in the past. I think this is a pretty standard event. When I was looking at the bracket, I think maybe earlier I said in this video, I don't remember, that Mia definitely looked like the favorite to win this event, and it definitely showed. Besides a really close set with Umeki, Mia pretty much dominated with a pretty strong wins over Toragiri, Yoshidora, and then also, as I said, Umeki, and a double elimination on Doramigi. Which was interesting because I think when playing Doramigi went hero for the second set of the first set. There was only one set of grand finals, but the first game of grand finals after losing in winners finals, and apparently hero was actually Doramigi's main before Midman, and I did not know that. So that's super sick to like see come out, even though it kind of got a bit bodied. But yeah, speaking of Doramigi, once again another top 2 finish. So that means Doramigi's season so far has been second, first, second at all 4 events that Doramigi has entered. That's crazy consistency coming from what has been essentially solo Midman outside of this one hero pick. Snow picking up again another really strong result. Didn't find the wins over Doramigi or like in another grand's positioning, but really good run after losing to Doramigi twice. Seems to be kind of the player that Snow's been kind of struggling with now. Didn't lose to Luigi this time. Aegis actually came through and beat the Navy, so there you go. But unfortunately, it looks like a new demon has arisen, giving Snow a lot more stress to get to that top results. But overall, still some really sick wins. Game 5 over Ashimo. And Watanabe, who I want to talk about too, getting 4th place after just getting sponsored, so beating the sponsor curse. Really strong losers run after losing to Neo at the beginning of top 64, came from Indonesia for this event, no longer in Japan, but went on a crazy losers run, beating Kanabe, Yoshidora, and 2 other surprise players who ended up in the top 8. Yeah, Umeki made another top 8, Level 1 made another top 8, and making top 8 for the first time ever is 2 completely different players. One who has come close a lot of past events, getting like 9th and 13th, but finally cracking in is Daigoro, the only male Korin player to ever exist. Daigoro had some pretty big wins over Kaninabe, who's been playing really hot recently, who got top 16 finish, as well as level 1 in a game 5 set. Couldn't clutch out any further beyond 5th, kind of guess get into winners top 8 to immediately getting 5th double elimination that happens sometimes. But kept those sets close against Doramigi and Watanabe. But still, very standout performance from this player. And then also a big surprise was Fire. So Fire lost really early in the bracket to Ryuo at top 128, and then just all the, like, how many sets is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 set losers run to make top 8. End up finishing a 7th, losing to Watanabe, but Fire's one of those players in Japan who is from a very segmented region of it. He's not really connected to the rest of the scene, so seeing them succeed in this kind of environment away from their region, where they've done pretty well for the most part. They've won some of the bigger events in the Tohoku precinct, but to finally make a top 8, especially with solo Aegis, which I feel like we haven't seen that in a long time. I think Cosmos is the last solo Aegis to really make a top 8 at S Factor. Really impressive result from the player, and finally getting that kind of performance that you'd think maybe they were capable of after seeing them being so strong in their own area of Japan. Some real hidden bosses across Japan, like Fire and Akio, who don't compete much out of their more tucked away regions of Japan, but really show up when they do. But yeah, this is a pretty big event. I gotta talk about Quid. Quid and Pharaoh were here from the States, as I think a few other players, but Quid had a pretty phenomenal run of wacky ass matchups. Lost to Navy at top 64, but beat Lunamato, and then had to deal with Tas, Toragiri, just 2 character jump scares if you don't know what they do. Very close set with Toragiri, very good set as well if you get time to watch it. And unfortunately kind of ran into another Japan jump scare of the best Toon Link in the world, and it was also a really close set. But yeah, putting Pokemon Trainer back on the map, nice to see Quid return, and hopefully we see Quid compete more in the States, because it feels like it's been a long time since we got to really see them go on a run like this. But super fun to watch. Just shy of top 8, which was really unfortunate, but otherwise really strong result at such a big event like this. Another surprising shallow performance from Raru. unfortunately getting out at 17th. I feel like Rauru has not been able to get as many consistent top 8s at these events. Lost to both Neo and Karage, which Neo is not that big of a surprise. Let's actually kind of talk about Neo. Neo's been kind of tucked away in Indonesia for a bit after moving away from Japan, hasn't really competed outside, but showed pretty big glimpses of excellence when they did leave the region and beat like Rio at a big Chinese event, and just definitely showcased that they can still compete with the top. Unfortunately, Neo just missed top 8, but also made, as I said, big upsets over Rauru and sent Motonabe in losers. So it's not like Neo couldn't compete, just unfortunately didn't make it to the top 8. And I'm very excited to see how they do once they go to, I believe, Genesis as their next big event outside of Indonesia. But overall, yeah, that covers, I think, every event has happened, every major event that's happened since I've been on break. We don't really have any others happening until Genesis, so this is kind of going to be a bit of a more shallower time in Ultimate, where we kind of sit around and have a lot of smaller events to watch. I just put up like the events to look out for weekend posts on LumiRank, just paired it today, and there's like 9 small B, C tier events, so there's going to be a lot of fun like smaller events to watch, but in terms of major presence, it's probably going to not be any. I mean, not even probably, there's just not going to be any until Genesis. It's going to be a very slow month from now. We'll see how things develop by then. We have 6 different major winners already this season, which is insane. The fact that every single major that has happened in Japan has had a different winner is definitely showcasing how tight the top echelon of competitors is. Wanted to take an extra look at Genesis real quick just to see how many of those players are actually going to Genesis, how many of the major winners are. And I see Spargosa 1, Mia 2, Akala 3, Shuton 4, Hurt 5, Lima 6. So I believe that means that means there's been 7 major winners, because the only major winner that's not listed here is Doramigi. So 6 out of the 7 major winners are going to Genesis of this season already. So this is going to already be a very tight competition at the top, plus other players who we haven't seen at majors yet this season, like Sox, who just won Afterburner. I think that's the only player who really missed LMBM. There was probably someone else that's not coming to mind. But otherwise, this is going to be a very tight event. So all of this leading up to Genesis, where there might be a good chance that none of the 7 players, or none of the 6 of the 7 major winners who are here actually end up winning, with like Sonics, Rauru, Leo, even Snow, who are like Zamba could go on another Genesis run. This is going to be a very, very close event. So whoever takes this, I think, has a very big lead into being the #1 player for the season, but also like winning a Genesis title. There's so very few players who have it. It's, I think, just Leo, Mars, and Zamba. It'd be really interesting to see someone else finally take the title. But there's a good chance that they might not, because both Leo and Zamba are here, and Leo's been performing really well recently, and Genesis Leo has been a thing for years. He always prepares for this event the most. It's the title he wants to hold on to the most. So this is going to be a very interesting event, and I'm really looking forward to watching it.